So, when you start to view life through the perspective that we don't actually have that much of a free will, well, then you will actually start to take things less personal, about what other people do to you, okay, how they're treating you. Because people really are habitual programs, okay? We're all just our subconscious programming. I mean, Carl Jung even said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Because that's what it is, right? If you're not unconscious, if you're not conscious of your own conscious things that are going on inside your mind, and especially if there are shitty things, well, then you're gonna be a shitty person, right? And you're gonna treat other people in the same shitty way, and you will think that's even normal in some cases because you don't know any better, right? So, for example, take a narcissist. They're the most perfect example of what a shitty person is, right? But who's to blame that they're a shitty person? So, on one hand, themselves, obviously, but on the other hand, it's also their upbringing, right? Their parents, their caregivers, because narcissists are made. They are not born this way, okay? They were not born like this. I've learned this from Dr. Amani, by the way. She's an expert on narcissism. You can find her on YouTube. So yeah, it's in our control, okay, how we act and how we think and how we feel to some extent, but only to the extent that we are aware of ourselves and that we are willing to change. So if you start to think in that way, right, that people have limited free will, then you will actually take things less personal, okay? You will not be so much affected by what other people say and do, especially if it's directed to you, because you know that they're coming from their own subconscious programming, and especially if they are not spiritual, if they are not very aware, then then it will show on how they're acting, right? So in Luke 23:34 in the Bible, Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And this quote, I love this one, perfectly illustrates for how we should treat other people, okay? Because some people are just not that aware, right? They're not very spiritually aware, and that's fine because everyone is on their own spiritual journey and they're exactly where they are meant to be. So you cannot force someone to accelerate their spiritual journey, okay? Because that's their thing, it's not yours. So you're meant to focus on your own spiritual journey, and then you can influence them, right, to follow in your footsteps, but it's not your job to interrupt their journey. So when you can just have compassion for other people, for where they are in their spiritual journey, where they are in regards to their mindsets, and just know that it's part of their subconscious programming. It's not part of who they really are, the way they act, okay? Because their real selves, is their soul, okay? It is unconditional love. People are truly on the inside, their true selves are unconditionally loving, okay? Because they are unconditional love themselves, but a lot of people have forgotten this, okay? So you're not gonna experience this side of someone if they have not realized this truth of themselves. So if you can just remain in the knowing that people are who they are and they're exactly where they're meant to be, then you can have peace with that and you can just move on and find peace with yourselves and just be as. So another thing I got about free will is from Dolores Cannon. If you don't know her, she was a very famous hypnotherapist. She put people under deep hypnosis, and what she got from it is that, well, we choose our parents and our siblings and all of it before we are even born. Okay, so let's say one of your parents is an alcoholic or a drug addict, and if they were also an alcoholic or drug addict in their past life, and they didn't resolve that, then they will most likely incarnate again with those same issues. Okay, because that's how it works. So I've heard Bashar say that we don't carry karma from past lives, but I think it's different when you had addictions in a past life and you didn't resolve them, then many times you carry those over. Okay, it's not like you have to deal with them again, but it's because it's still deeply reprogrammed into your subconscious. Okay, that you had those habits, those tendencies, so that's why you are still attracted towards those things. Okay, so but anyway, so that's why I want to say, like, how much of a free will do you really have when you are, let's say, a child who was born with these kinds of parents, right? So you're automatically influenced just by being around them, just by them raising you. Okay, so basically, your free will is in the way you respond to things. But how others treat you, you don't really control that, because it could literally be because of a person's own trauma, or because it was in their soul contract to treat you a certain way. Okay, so here's another thing. Dolores Cannon has actually also said that some people are literally your best friend on the other side, but in this life, they are your worst enemy. So what this means is that you made contracts with them for them to appear to you as an enemy just to teach you something, but they're not really your enemy. So I know this sounds so crazy, but this is apparently the real truth, okay? And actually in my heart, I feel like this is the truth, okay? That our reality is not really what it seems. And if we would not take everything so harshly, and we would just be more conscious of the fact that we are in a play, okay, just like Shakespeare has once said that all men and women are merely players, um, and something like that. I don't know how it ends, but yeah, we are just all playing our parts, okay? So if we would be less judgmental of how others treat us and just see things from the higher perspective, that we are just here for a while just to play the game of life, then we would not be so stressful all the time, right? We would just be more at peace and go more with the flow of how things are going and just enjoy life more.